Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Muse Writers Center online. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We are here and excited to celebrate the work of our friend Bill Glose and the release of his new poetry collection, Postscript to War. My name is Michael Candelwall. I'm the Executive Director of the Muse Writers Center, and I want to tell you a little bit about what we do. We're one of the largest literary centers in the country now. We offer online and in-person creative writing classes in all genres for all levels and ages. Right now, of course, we're all online. Our new class schedule is available. It's our winter-spring class schedule, and you can see it on our website at the-muse.org, the-muse.org. So check out those classes. And again, they're all virtual. They're all online on Zoom. So you can take them from anywhere. And also don't forget, we offer tuition assistance to anyone who needs it. We don't ever turn anyone away. And last year we gave out almost $30,000 in tuition help because we don't want anything getting in the way of someone who wants to write. We also offer hundreds of free literary events each year, just like this one. Teacher readings, book launches, writing clubs, and so many more kinds of events. Coming this month, we have a lot of really cool stuff, including a reading of our students from our fall semester that's coming up this coming Wednesday, January 27th at 7 p.m. It'll be live streamed in the same way that we're doing this here. I also wanted to let you know that we are offering a Teen Writers Fellowship. So if you are a 10th or 11th grader or know someone who is, it's a wonderful program where you receive admission into our regular teen class, plus there's a class just for the fellows. There's one-on-one mentorship with professional writers, and the whole thing is valued at over $2,000, and it's absolutely free, but you have to apply. And the applications are due, I believe, Monday or Tuesday. So please check that out on our website as well. A quick disclaimer before we start. All the work read by Bill is his original work and is owned by him unless otherwise noted. Some of the work here today may be published in print or online, and some may be unpublished. This live stream today is no way a publication of unpublished works. And a recording of this live stream will be available on our website and our YouTube page and Facebook, and after the event if you missed some of it. And again, go to our website for anything you want to know, the-muse.org. And following Bill's reading, we'll have a Q&A with the author. And if you are watching live and have a question you want to ask, write it in either the Facebook event page comments or in the YouTube comment section at any point during the reading, during the event, and we'll try to get those asked of Bill. So now let me introduce Bill Glose, my good friend. Bill's a former paratrooper and combat veteran, the author of 5 books of poetry. His stories, poems, and essays have appeared in numerous publications, including the Missouri Review, The Sun, Narrative Magazine, and The Writer. In 2011, he was named the Daily Press Poet Laureate, and in 2017, he was featured on NPR on the Writer's Almanac. Other honors include the F. Scott Fitzgerald Short Story Award, the Robert Bausch Fiction Award, and the Dateline Award for Excellence in Journalism. Postscript to War won the 2020 Main Street Rag Poetry Book Award. Uniting his own combat experience with those of other veterans, Bill has examined the long-lasting effects of battle and the injuries that are often invisible to the naked eye. The poems in Postscript to War peel away the scab of memory to reveal the raw and tender emotions that lie within. The individual poems in this collection have won 7 awards, and 2 were nominated for a Pushcart Prize. So now I'd like to turn it over to Bill Glose to read to us. Thank you so much for being here, Bill.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. The Muse is a fantastic organization, and I am glad to be affiliated with it in any way at all. As Michael mentioned, I am a veteran of the Gulf War, so a lot of the poems that I've written over the years have dealt with those experiences. However, my current book, Postscript to War, deals more with the current with the current. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there. deals with the current war, and I merge my experiences with research and other things I've learned. My original book of poetry, which dealt with my personal experiences, was Half a Man. And yes, that is me there on the cover. The Main Street Rags editor decided to use someone else for the current cover, which was a wise choice. I was in the 82nd Airborne. The AA patch stands for All Americans because in World War II, they had members of the unit came from all 50 states. And then the tab above it, the airborne tab, says that our main way of going into combat was by parachute. We jump out of planes. And so that airborne tab comes into this first poem. Alternate history. When we rolled into Iraq, newspapers predicted more than half of us would die. Eyes masked by tinted goggles, we feigned indifference with shrugs, joking and slugging shoulders embroidered with airborne tabs, those narrow strips proclaiming our shared religion. Looking back on my younger self, so full of bravado and jingoistic pride, I ponder the multiverse theory of existence. On another plane, perhaps predictions were correct. My corpse rolled into an unmarked grave, then covered by a dune's shifting sand. But then another world would provide yet another version of me, one who never went to war, never bargained with God to swing his hammer on someone else, never unleashed the black dog within his heart and set its gnashing teeth to work. After World War I and World War II, after Vietnam and Korea, soldiers brought home various trophies from their wars. Usually these trophies were enemy weapons, a Luger, a sniper rifle, a bayonet. I brought home something different, something oh so familiar that had morphed into something strange and foreign but intriguing. A can of Pepsi and a can of Coke, but with Arabic lettering. So these are what I brought back with me. And this next poem deals with that. It's called War Trophies. As if it were a sport and records begged for breaking, as if mantles existed just to hold the gold cups of our glory, we sought war trophies amid the wreckage of another country. Like a plague of locusts, we raced over rock-strewn plains, as foreign as the dark side of the moon. Inside back-splintered bunkers, we sifted confetti of wood and ash, blood and bone. I was just a boy who thought he was a man, feelings clenched in fists. Everything I did a pose for someone else. My only mementos from that other life are 2 soda cans on the shelf above my DVDs. Familiar logos of Coke and Pepsi transformed by Arabic lettering. Curious enough to catch the eye of visitors to my apartment, but not enough to make them think of war, to make them ask what else I carried home. And for this next one, I thought I would give you a visual of a different sort. A lot of my poems, I talk about what life is like in the desert. I wanted you to be able to see what life is like in the desert yourself. So this is Mouth of Sand. Mouth of Sand by Bill Glose.
Outside our tents, wind-whipped brown lances every sliver of exposed skin. Canvas walls billow like gasping lungs as we spit gouts of sand-flecked phlegm and listen to a low-pitched keening like the moaning of a bassoon. Truth is like the scouring grit of wind, precious lives stripped away to leave one naked as a newborn calf. Sand inside our goggles, our gloves, our underwear, the interior mechanisms of our guns, bolts cracked open to reveal powder as fine as regolith scooped from the moon, a surface without atmosphere, without sound. Every granule loves to tell the story of how it once belonged to a mountain, before the pulverizing sledge of time, before the yowl of wind eroded every falsehood to which it clung.
All right. So that's what it was like being out there in the desert. This next poem was inspired by a wedding here at home. A friend of mine, her son married into a Muslim family. And when I went to the wedding, I was surprised to find a lot of the women who were obeying the Sharia law, but were not wearing burqas. They were wearing stylish dresses, and then they had full body suits on underneath those. And here are, so this was one of the pictures from that wedding. That's my friend Terry in the black dress, and women obeying different levels, and not everyone there was Muslim either. And then also the men and women tended to dance separately in groups, and they had a lot of ritualistic dances that they did that I also found interesting. And all of that played into this next poem called Amid the Dancing Glee. In the desert, we were warned that gunfire wasn't always hostile, that wedding guests sometimes fired AKs into the air to celebrate the new and joyous union. Like us with fireworks on 4th of July, explosions without shrapnel or casualties, without wails rising from an impact site like smoke from a doused campfire, spurting all its steam before it dies. Intel briefings alerted us to inadvertent ways we might offend, touching a woman, drawing Muhammad, drinking alcohol, prohibition stacked upon prohibition like tears of a ziggurat, lifting our ignorance high above the sand-scrubbed earth. Years later, when a friend's son marries into a Muslim family, all I can think of is gunfire and how I shouldn't shoot back unless barrels point my way. Bearded men lock arms and dance in a semicircle, stomping as if trying to crush a fleeing mouse. Women cover heads with hijabs, wear bodysuits to conceal legs down to the ankle, their arms to the wrist. Over those, they throw cocktail dresses and lariat-style necklaces, strung with jeweled flowers, striding on stilettoed heels fit for a Parisian catwalk. Goaded by ululations from the bride's mother, they danced to the duduk's syrupy moan, their sashayed rhythm and rehearsed motions as transfixing as the call and response of church. That swaddled sense of security I once felt shoulder to shoulder in a pew of congregants repeating lines of scripture. As night progresses, differences between East and West melt into night, subsumed by gleeful faces glistening on the dance floor, some covered, some not, each bathed by the light of the same North Star. And that poem, Amid the Dancing Glee, won first prize from one of the Poetry of Virginia, the Poetry Society of Virginia contest. And I want to mention that because the current contest is still going on. And not only are there cash prizes for first, second, third place in so many of the categories, you also get publication in the journal Poetry Virginia. And the place where you can find that is at poetrysocietyofvirginia.org. That's where all the information for the contest is. And the deadline for that has been extended to February 5th. So there's still a little time to get in on that. For this next poem, I thought again I would do another video. This next poem is a reversible poem. And
War in
okay, so yeah, so a reversible poem is one that can be read both forwards and backwards, and depending on the direction you read it, it can have a starkly different meaning. So here,
War in Reverse by Bill Glose. Anything can be destroyed. I can be the one who pulls the trigger. My dream of being death is all that matters. I want no more of love. Thinking of the carnage I might incur, I'm fearful of a long and lasting peace. My greatest desire is war. That's why I hate civilized society. My place is in the ruinous din of battle. I have seen all I want of other people. I am only good for killing and will never think that I belong here at home. I belong here at home and will never think that I am only good for killing other people. I have seen all I want of the ruinous din of battle. My place is in civilized society. I hate war. That's why my greatest desire is of a long and lasting peace. Fearful of the carnage I might incur, I'm thinking love is all that matters. I want no more of death. My dream of being the one who pulls the trigger can be destroyed. I can be anything.
so that that poem took me years to get that put together in that right form, but it can be a hard task to do, but it can be very rewarding to try to tackle one of those reversible poems. Yeah, so this next one, is there anyone out there who has an idea who that might be? So that is Steve Martin, who came out there on a USO trip and visited with us. And I happened to get close enough to I got a picture with him. But we expected him to put on a show for us for about 45 minutes or so, and he only stayed for a couple of minutes and took off. And since I was right next to him, I heard him talking to his handler, and he was saying, "This isn't what I signed up for," and then he got out of there. About a month after that, we had another U.S. show coming out to us. We were frontline troops, so a lot of the people that came out there to visit would go to the rear echelon where there were nicer amenities. We had barracks and we're out in the desert. But about a month later, a comedian who was subbing in for Johnny Carson came out there, Jay Leno. And again, he was supposed to entertain us for about 45 minutes. And he stayed for nearly 4 hours. And I've been a Jay Leno fan ever since then. So this next poem is called Behind the Curtain. Steve Martin arrived in desert camouflage, USO ball cap perched on his head, unfolding from a Humvee into Saudi sun like a slow tongue of unrolling carpet. He posed with soldiers who'd just finished PT on a slab outside our barracks. Morning, but already 110, heat down to the stitching between muscle and bone. I stood shoulder to shoulder beside this idol from my youth, so close I could hear his sotto voce reprimand to an aide like a maitre d' passing back a declined credit card. This isn't what I signed up for. What had the wild and crazy guy expected? Air conditioning, media spilling into aisles, sound bites swirling like a harem's silken caress. Our cardboard cameras captured pinhole images of brown landscapes dotted with date palms and juniper bushes. We set aside an hour for his show, for fake arrows through his head, for King Tut songs and dances. But his cameo lasted mere moments, disappointment lingering like the chalky aftertaste of home remedies. The epiphany took years to come, late in life, when most sense finally settles down. Knowing why Oz projected his image 50 feet tall on billowing smoke, then hid behind the curtain, disembodied voice of a man hiding his soup-stained robe. And I mentioned before that I was a paratrooper, and so I have several pictures here to kind of tell you a little bit of what being a paratrooper is like. First, it's very different from skydiving. The skydiving you see where someone jumps into a football game and tiptoes off at the 50-yard line, they've got these steerable chutes that have great control. We jumped these brown rounds. They were T-10 Charlie parachutes, and they dropped you down, straight down to the ground as fast as possible, because the longer you were in the air, the longer you were a target. So we hit the ground at about 18 to 22 feet per second, which is, pretty hard. To avoid breaking a leg, you were supposed to keep your feet and knees together and curl your body like a banana as you hit to spread the impact out across your body. This was called a PLF, a parachute landing form. Unfortunately, we were so loaded down with equipment, we had the parachute on our back, so our rucksack, which was full of all the equipment we would need in the field, we had on our legs, we had our reserve on our bellies, and then we had our weapons in a carrier on our side. So we had to kind of duck walk just to get onto the plane. And when we got on there, they crammed in about 141 of us, about 120 of us into a C-141. So it was, quite the routine. And then every mass tactical jump we would have, and that's when a battalion jumps, so about 700 people. For every one of those jumps, at least one person would break a leg. So that's what the skies look like on a drop zone when we're all coming down. So this next poem talks a little bit about the life of paratroopers. It's called Theories of Flight and Forbearance. And it opens with an epigraph. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Alfred Lord Tennyson from the charge of the Light Brigade. In the rumbling gloom of a starlifter's belly, paratroopers sit shoulder to shoulder in cupped mesh of bench seats, jostling in sync with the juddering plane as if their mass were one breathing body, a desert snake sidewinding over sand. Parachutes on backs press them into rucks balanced on laps. Laden like mules and wedged tight as an M4's detent pin, bodies interlock like Spartan hoplites at Thermopylae, like cavalry at Balaclava, like Pickett's boys racing toward the low stone wall at Cemetery Ridge. Burrowing toward uncertain futures, each jumper ponders drop zone assembly areas studied from sand tables, markered on maps whose contour lines mimic ripples on a pond. Or else, they empty minds like a guru, aware only of the living moment, serenity coming like sleep without dreams. Flecked with sweat, grease-painted faces are stoic as marble busts of Plato and Socrates. They, too, know the value of asking why. But SOP dictates silence. Jingling dog tags must be taped as if covering blood type and religious affiliation might blot out thoughts of ruin. When side doors open, cool air tongues the suffocating tube. Jump masters swipe bladed hands across steel lips, then lean into the howl of night. Camouflage fabric snapping in spastic glee. Nap of the earth scrolling by like images seen through the slots of a zoetrope. Sticks rise to their feet, and each man snaps his nylon static line into the wire cable, surrendering himself to this machine. When the door's red light turns green, he will do what is expected. March forward, pivot and leap, prop blast, throwing him sideways before silk rights the world again. So easy under canopy to consider how little control he has on anything after that first step. The ever upward rush of ground, the topography of fate, the way everyone is hurtling toward some form of impact. And yeah, so I think that might be a good time for me to, a good one for me to wrap up on. And so Mike, were there any,
Bill, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for reading from your new book for us. So now's a great time if anyone who's currently watching this, if I can get my screen to move, there we go. So please, if you're you are able to ask a question either in the Facebook event or on the YouTube comment section, and those will be passed along to me, and I'll ask Bill. But I have a few questions for you too. So, Bill, I think the obvious question is to start off with this book and your poetry, often dealing with the physical and emotional effects of war and battle. How do you approach that? How do you deal with the raw emotion of your own memories, and also anticipating what emotion might be stirred in the reader, but you still want to convey, your poem and the art of it?
Right. So as you mentioned in the opening about how a lot of these are like peeling away the scab from a raw wound, that is true. And so writing the poems, reading the poems, listening to the poems can bring up raw emotions. But the thing I have found it cathartic and healing for myself. Things that were difficult just to consider, I'm able to talk about now, or think about, write about. So for anyone who is a veteran, or has a family member or friend who is a veteran, you think, oh, they shouldn't read something like this, or oh, they shouldn't write something like this, they shouldn't write about their own experience. No, nothing has ever improved by ignoring it. That's just the way things, well up and eventually explode. So I have found writing these has been a great release for me.
That's a very interesting point that you just made, that nothing's ever healed by ignoring it, or nothing's ever evolved by ignoring it. And that's something that I think we should all remember, no matter what we're dealing with, that looking at something without judgment, this sort of understanding that's part of us, or whatever, that's the only way to sort of evolve from there. It's a really cool point. Thank you, Bill. Here's a question I like to ask really almost everyone that I interview in this situation. So like all artists, you have your joys and frustrations. What advice would you give young or emerging poets and writers about their writing life? Any advice to those who hope to be published someday?
My main piece of advice is to revise. There are so many people who I've seen at the open mics who scrawl something on a napkin and get up and think it's great art. And it might be the germ of great art, but usually to get something to where it's in publishable form, you need to put work into it. That initial inspiration, that drive to write, that passion, that is what great poetry comes from. But then you have to take out that red pen like a scalpel and cut away all the fat that doesn't serve your purpose. And I think too many young writers do not spend time revising. They just move on to the next one and write something else and write something else. And a writing routine like that is great, but you should also spend the time revising. And I think that's the best way to improve your craft and improve what it is that you're putting out there.
I think most emerging writers sometimes don't realize that 95% of writing is revision. It's the most important thing, and for a lot of reasons, but one I think especially is that oftentimes our first drafts or rough drafts or whatever the initial impulse comes from our unconscious, and it's perfect in its deep form, but we have to translate that into language. And once you take that from your unconscious into the world on paper, language is tricky. And so the beauty of the revision process is when you actually get to take control of it yourself and you get to really craft it. I think some people find that to be daunting, but it can be really fun. I think it was
well put.
I think Elie Wiesel said that his first draft of his book was 600 pages and his last draft 200 pages, but he said those 400 pages are still there. They're still there. They just have been shaped better. So we do have some questions coming in from the audience. Sharon Ackerman would like to know, are you working on a new book now?
Yes, so there are two books that I'm shopping around right now, and there are two books that I'm working on. So uh, there's a poetry book called Terminal Diagnosis that I'm shopping around, and there's a collection of short fiction called All the Ruined Men that I'm shopping around. And then the two books that I'm working on, another book of poetry called Old Masters in a New Millennium, that takes old masters like Archimedes and Van Gogh and everybody, and imagines them in the current millennium and the current situation. So I've been having a lot of fun with that one, and then a novel called Scarlet Fever. So
Cool.
I've got my pen dipped in several inkwells.
So you're keeping yourself. I mean, writers have to write. I think that's one thing that also I'm saying to myself, right? Because we all get distracted by things. But one of the biggest reasons that writer's block happens is because people don't take the time to sit down and write. And you might write junk for 1 hour, but you'll get to some good meat, I think. And you are an example to us all, because you're writing all these different things and keeping your mind flowing, and I really appreciate that. We have a question from Susan Deutsch. What was the process of writing that reverse poem like? Did you start off with the goal of writing a reverse poem, or did that idea come later?
Okay, so the idea came later, and actually I didn't realize that at the time there was such a thing as a reverse poem. I was writing on this, and I thought of the concept, and originally I thought about writing it from two different perspectives: an American soldier and an Iraqi soldier, and having them both saying the same things, and then crossing over at one point saying negative things about each other. And if you looked at it from both perspectives, it made sense. That's how it started out. And then as I was working on it, I eventually took the other side out and just left it with the American soldier. And it started reversing on itself. And then I found later on that this was a thing, that there were plenty of reversible poems out there. But yeah, so it started out with an exercise imagining two people and how each looks at each other, can look at each other with such hatred, but if you look at it from their own perspective, you can get inside their body and their shoes and understand where they're coming from. So.
Very cool. Here's a question for you. So Postscript Award won the Main Street Rag Poetry Book Award. Can you let us all know what that process is like, applying for an award, preparing a collection?
Right. So just like many other contests, I simply entered on Submittable for this one. And I, when I put my books together, and once I have it in manuscript form, I will send it out to numerous contests or to certain publishers. And this one just hit really well there. The publisher actually called me before the contest window was shut. They said that they had gotten to that manuscript, and he wanted he knew I might have it out at other places, and he wanted to secure it so it wouldn't go anywhere else. So so that was a good
That's
feeling.
awesome.
Yeah. So much of writing takes place in the lonely hours by ourselves, and so when you get positive feedback like that, it really means a lot. It helps fuel you for those long hours.
Absolutely. I just want to remind everyone to put your questions in either the Facebook event page, or even better, in the YouTube comments section for the video you're watching right now. Bill, I have another question for you. Let me scroll back down. So you kind of said this when you were giving advice to emerging writers out there, but I'm curious, what's the best piece of advice you were given when you were an emerging poet?
I think, and this doesn't have us to do with the poetry, but also with the short story collection I have out now. And that was to write about what is most personal to me. You know, I originally was not writing about my war experiences, and my writing mentor, Billy Walsh, he, you know, he kept goading me and encouraging me to write about my war. And, you know, I started in slowly with the poetry. I wrote an essay that that went over very well, and I've been writing poetry, and now I've gotten into fiction and writing some other essays as well. But I think if you write what matters most to you, then what comes across will matter to the reader as well. If you're just trying to chase whatever the trend of the time is, if you're saying, oh, zombies are popular now, I'll write about zombies, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, if instead you write what matters to you, then your passion will come through in your words, and it will be the strongest writing that you can do. And so I think that was the best advice and direction that I got.
It's very good advice. So we have a request, Bill. Terry Joseph on the chat, on the comment section, has asked if you would read the poem about betting on scorpions.
Ah, sure. I can.
I thought that would be a nice poem to end on, and then after the poem, I'll say a few closing remarks.
Okay. Yeah. So this one was also one of the prize winners. For any veterans out there, there is a great organization, the Missouri Humanities Council, every year puts out a journal called Proud to Be, writings by American warriors. And there is a poetry contest, a fiction contest, an essay, and an interview contest. And it's free for veterans and families of veterans. And so, yeah, it was a fantastic platform. So I suggest you look into that. So this is Questions Raised by Black Scorpions. Where they came from, no one knew. These segmented, scabrous creatures shaken from our boots. So foreign seeming to us foreigners who thought we were anything but. Who was first to snap them in Tupperware, I can't recall. Only how each backed away with pincers raised, tail curled into a venom-spiked question mark. What we did was place two in circles inscribed by ammo crates and watch them fight. Which would live and which would die, we bet on them instead of ourselves. Letters written just in case, burning like coals in our pockets. When orders sent us scuttling into Iraq, we set them free and oiled our weapons, each man swimming in an ocean of questions. Leaders pointed to destinations on maps inscribed with grease marble circles. Only answer we would ever get.
That was lovely. Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much. You know, one thing I wanted to mention also, as we're concluding, besides thanking you so much for being here and for sharing your work and your words and your passion for it. Thanks for sharing that for everyone who's watching. I want to also thank the NEA for supporting the Muse Writers Center's programming we do for the military and the veteran community. And to remind you that we're both in partnership with the Armed Services Arts Partnership, where Bill often teaches. And also on our own, we have a lot of great programming for the military and veteran community, all available information on our website. And also you can check out ASAP's asap.org is the Armed Services Arts Partnership. But our website, of course, is the.muse.org. So again, thank you, Bill, for being here. Thanks everyone who's watching either right now live or watching later. So thank you on Tuesday for watching as well.